Kevin, welcome back. Kevin, I've been looking forward to this. Oh my goodness, since our last conversation, and what a great conversation we had, and just a story of your leadership and where you've been and growing up a military brat and moving every 2 or 3 years, and your service in the Air Force. We discussed last time we were together, and the tips that you gave us that were just so meaningful. In fact, if those of you that were listening and you might not remember, but he left us with great tips, like check your ego and ask good questions and take care of your personal brand and know your strategies. Now those are awesome. In fact, it left me thirsty, Kevin. It left me wanting more, and I know our listeners want more. And we're excited to have you here today. Welcome back to Crossing the Line.
Larry, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I very much enjoyed our conversation and have to honestly say I look forward to picking it up again. It was just a conversation, and I love that more than anything else. So thanks for having me.
Well, Kevin, speaking of picking it up, I did make a promise on part one. I made a promise that you're an entertainer. You travel the world entertaining. My goodness, you're an artist. So I've asked you, and you've graciously said yes, that you would pick up your guitar and you would play and sing something for us. Will you do it, Kevin?
I will. I have to caveat it by saying that, I don't play as much as I used to. It's going to be sort of a garage, or we'll call it a porch style singing here. I was thinking about that, and I wasn't sure if you were serious about it, but I do keep a guitar right here. And you mentioned what you mentioned a moment ago is very important. As a matter of fact, let me just grab this so I can get here in position. Part of my life story, and I'll just say this quickly, was growing up even though I grew up as a military brat, and my father, who was a Green Beret, and I mean, my dad was a soldier. That was his world. He loved it more than anything else. I remember in the mornings, waking up and hearing him put on his fatigues, and they were so starched that you could hear sounded like cardboard. And his boots, you looked at his boots and literally you could see yourself in them. They were just, and he spit shined them. And so, but here's the other part of it. My dad was also a singer. And as a matter of fact, he served with Elvis Presley over in Germany.
Wow.
I don't remember exactly the year, but in Frankfurt, he knew him. They weren't close friends, he said, but they were buddies. And as a matter of fact, just as a little side note, he said, and Kevin, because he was, Elvis was already Elvis at this point. He said, the one thing that really surprised me is he was humble. And he said he was a good soldier. And that's, coming from a Green Beret and a committed soldier like my dad, that's quite a statement, to say that Elvis, with all of his luxuries and fame, he said he was really a good soldier.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing to hear that. And so in any event, my dad, so we grew up listening to my dad sing and play guitar. He was a country singer. I'm not particularly a country singer, if you will, but I grew up wanting to be a star, a rock star, a movie star. I didn't care what kind of entertainment. I loved entertainment. I loved being an entertainer. And I guess I got it from my dad, but I grew up listening to him. He was an amazing vocalist. This is not just Kevin, his son, saying that. He could have easily been a big star. His voice was so beautiful. He had this nice big range, baritone to first tenor. I mean, it was just absolutely gorgeous. But he was a soldier, and that's what he believed in. So I remember sitting around all different places around the world, Germany, Fort Bragg, wherever we lived. His special forces buddy would come over, and they'd sit around and have Jim Beam, and he'd play the guitar, playing all the hits, country hits, old school country. So here's the thing. When I got out of high school, I dreamed of becoming a recording artist. I didn't care what it was. But I started writing songs about 14. And just writing them in my bedrooms. Most of them were love songs, and most of them were because girls had a habit of breaking up with me, so I wrote a lot of good songs about that. And but in any event, when I was 17 or 18, when I got out of the high school, I moved to Bowling Green, where he was teaching military science at Western Kentucky. This was right at the end of his career. And I was going to go there and make it in Nashville as a songwriter, musician songwriter. And by then I had written dozens of songs. As a matter of fact, by the time I went into the Air Force at age 20, I bet you I'd written 200 songs. I mean, I'd really written a lot of songs. I don't have most of them anymore. They're probably sitting in a landfill right now on toilet paper or something, most of them. But in any event, having said that, I get to this area, and it was only 1 or 2 days that I realized I was woefully not ready. I wasn't even close to what I needed to be in order to become a recording artist, and hence I ended up going into the Air Force. And then there was that other aspect of my entertainment career, I guess you could say, that took place in the Air Force. So it's a longer story than that, but all that to say that I had written a bunch of songs, both, folk style and even some R&B style music, just throughout my career. Most of that, though, in my early, in my late teens and early 20s. And my dad, but here's what's interesting. My dad, as long as he played, he wrote one song, and I'm going to sing it for you today. But here's the thing: the backstory on the song is incredible. I don't know if I'd mentioned to you, but my dad, he passed away last April as a result, as a result of COVID, just tore him up. He was 84. And the last time I sang this song was actually at his funeral.
Oh my goodness.
I can already tell I may not make it through the song. So if I don't, then it'll be what it is.
Yeah. All right.
But here's the thing: the song he wrote, I believe, in 1968. He had been shot in Vietnam, and he went to a hospital. It was either in Thailand or the Philippines. I don't recall exactly. I believe it was in Thailand. And he wrote this song on the hospital bed.
Oh my goodness.
And it was written to my mother, who and what he did is he wrote this song as a letter. So what you're going to hear is the verse 1 is him writing a letter to her. Verse 2 is her writing back to him. And then I know I'm not going to make it through it. And then they divorced. My mother died when I was 16 in 1975. They had divorced 1 year before that. And after she passed away, so she was 41 when she passed, many times throughout the years after that, my dad expressed his deepest regret in divorcing her, and how much he missed her. She was Puerto Rican. She was from the island. She was just a beautiful, quiet, warm soul. And but anyway, so he wrote this song, and what I did is, after he passed, I wrote the third verse, and the third verse will make a lot of sense to you when you hear it. So,
oh my goodness,
we're just gonna see. I don't know what's gonna happen here. I can already tell. I thought, actually, yeah, I'll be okay if I try this, but it may not work. But we'll see what's gonna happen here. So, the song is called "Leaving You All Alone."
Wonderful.
I'm not gonna make it. I left you there all alone in despair and waiting there. I left with regret, and I asked you wait for me. I know it's hard for you alone, but it's just as hard on me. Please wait for me, my dearest one. Please wait for me. Please have faith and be strong. I won't be gone for very long. I love you, dear, and I pray the days will swiftly pass away as I write this letter, dear. Please wait for me without any fear. Please wait for me, my dearest one.
Please wait for me. I received your letter, dear. Have faith in me. I'm waiting here. I love you and miss every day. Come back to me. Don't stay away. I want your love, your tender kiss, your warm embrace is what I miss. I'll wait for you, my dearest one. I'll wait for you. I'll have faith and I'll be strong. I know it won't be very long until you're back into my arms where you belong with all your charm. As I close this letter, dear, have faith in me, my darling dear. I'll wait for you, my dearest one. I'll wait for you. You left me here all alone years ago. He called you home. It broke my heart. I hope you knew. I understand, but it's really true. I missed you every day, but I knew in time we'd see this day. We both had faith, my dearest one. Our waiting's done.
Woo. Oh my goodness, Kevin, thank you. What a beautiful song. What a beautiful tribute. And for you to share that with us is truly special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Folks, that's what transparency and authenticity and it looks like in a great leader. So thank you for sharing that incredibly meaningful song.
Thank you for having me.
Wow.
Having me doing it,
It's beautiful. Just beautiful. Wow. Take a deep breath and thank you for that again.
It's all good.
Amazing. and I want to ask you about some things today, talking about transparency and talking about being authentic. That and you're so kind to do that, and it shows it really is a testimony to your integrity and who you are as a leader. So I want to take us back to you're out of the Air Force, back to your story for just a minute. And I want us to keep walking down that track because some things happened in your journey that I think, just like that beautiful song, we needed to hear that. It touched our hearts. It helped us. It's reality. It's real. So some things happened to you that were raw, that were hard.
Yeah.
But yet you have turned them into a mechanism for helping others, a way, a path, if you will. So
that's right.
Would you mind? Can you take us back? You're out of the military now, and some things are going on with you.
Yes.
Walk us through some of that transitional struggle that you had, if you don't mind.
Well, no, not at all. So, I think as I believe I mentioned in the last conversation, so my career in the Air Force was involved in different things. One was human relations education. So we advised commanders on people problems and these other sorts of things. So I spent, out of my 20-year career, probably 13 of that was in that field of work, about 13 of it. And in that work, we learned about, basically helping commanders and managers and airmen and so forth solve people problems so that we could fight and win wars. And in that, I think I had mentioned, I developed an expertise in diversity and inclusion because in the military, we had a whole different perspective on it. And that was, it wasn't to ignore the human side of it, but it was really about this, that if you were a commander and your people weren't getting along or working together, it cost lives. And that your squadron or your battalion or whatever service you're from, you had to be in a place as a commander that your people could go fight and win wars. So if there's anything from sexual harassment to discrimination to whatever the complications are, or just basic leadership and morale problems, those needed to be solved for obvious reasons, you see. In fact, even if you look at the Vietnam War, the problems that came out of that, and what they learned with a commission that they did, I believe it was around 1970, 71, and learned the difficulties that when like for instance, in Travis Air Force Base, so they had, it was one of the biggest riots that took place that caused this commission to take place on equal opportunity treatment, mostly race relations, that they shut the base down for 3 days. And this was, again, I think around 1970 when this happened. Well, Travis Air Force Base was the biggest, Air Force wing in the world that transported people and supplies to Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And so here the base is shutting down over race relations problems. And they were very serious problems, but there were other race relations problems going on. So they started a commission and created then what was called the Race Relations Institute, which then turned into the Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute. It's a Department of Defense school down in Cocoa Beach. And that's where I went to school in 1987 to become basically an advisor, a coach, a trainer in these areas of human relations, education, equal opportunity treatment. And so that's where I started down this field of advising and coaching and consulting, management consulting, these sorts of things. And then towards the latter part of my career, I started working with the Covey Leadership Center, bringing in Covey's work into the military, 7 Habits, Principle-Centered Leadership, and all those sorts of things. So I say all of that to say that when I transitioned out of the Air Force in 2000, I was just going to continue down that road, take all the skills and the body of knowledge that I had, not to mention I'd been studying personal development since the early 80s. I mean, when I saw Tony Robbins come on television doing these infomercials, man, it just lit me up. And this is actually what got me on this road, taking my mind a little bit off of a failed entertainment career into another career that it just struck me. Personal growth was just, wow. And so I really invested a lot of time and money since, again, I think it was around 82 or something like this, started studying it. So as you see, I continue in this all the way through the end of my career where I started working with Covey. So all of that's important to the context that when I got out in 2000, we moved from Travis Air Force Base, California, to here, my wife and my 2 daughters. My wife is also a 10-year Air Force vet and did a lot of great work, serving our country. But she had gotten out a few years earlier. She started a piano teaching practice for young kids, and because she wanted to raise now our 2 daughters at the time. So we moved to the Nashville area, to Murfreesboro. And so our daughters were 1 and 3. My wife was trying to build her business here. We didn't know anybody here. We just moved to this area. And then, of course, I'm going to try to build a speaking, coaching, consulting practice, and this, that, and the other. So I embark on that process. We had just really brought our finances down, got them just well under control, where we could handle that. Because I was an enlisted guy. I was the E7 when I got out. I did pretty well in the Air Force, but you get out and retire, you get a pension, but it's not enough to make a living. So, we set aside enough money, gave myself a year to build this business, which I'm sure I can see the big proverbial rolling of everybody's eyes. What was he thinking to build the business in a year? Especially I had no business experience whatsoever. I didn't even know what the word human resources management was. We didn't use those terms in the military. Okay, so I start on this practice, and in the meantime, I'm working with temp agencies, sometimes $9-10 an hour. I'd go into organizations and be a receptionist, for $9 an hour. And, I came out really, I had an award-winning career, and it was a really weird scenario that here I had a really thick, deep bottom of a well of knowledge and skills. But now I'm sitting as a receptionist. But what was interesting about that is, on the one hand, I knew I had to put my ego aside. I mean, because, I'm watching all of these people operate in the private sector, and it was just an interesting perspective. And I didn't really tell people much about my background, because it became almost I just said to myself, no, I need to watch this from this perspective, what's going on, and interacting with senior leaders and whomever they are, and just watching the whole dynamic. So I did that. Well, after about a year of trying to build this business and you working, temp jobs, it wasn't working. It wasn't happening. I realized just how woefully weak I was when it came to building a business. And of course, you know this better than anybody else, that, I mean, you can be as skilled as you want, but you got to attract customers and clients. And I had no clue about that whatsoever. I mean, of course, I read books and I did all these things that I thought I needed to do, even had a bit of a mentor. So anyways, about a year into that process, Larry, I started getting very concerned because we were running out of money, and obviously we needed money. And then my frustration turned to concern, my concern turned to all sorts of things, until finally, and I think this was maybe around October of, I'm going to say around 2000, I think it was, maybe it was 2001, but anyways, all of this really spiraled out of control, and I went into a very deep, clinical depression. And I mean the kind that puts you on the floor and you can't get up in the morning. And then all this depression and anxiety turned to bulging discs in my back. And I mean, I became physically very, very ill, which then starts to exacerbate. One exacerbates the other, and it just continued to grow. So my wife, she decided to do some studying on depression and these sorts of things. And so one of the things she learned was, one healthy thing to do is to just start journaling about anything. Just, call it journaling, just putting your thoughts on the paper, what you're expressing, what you're feeling, and all these other sorts of things. So she literally kicked me out of the house, in the morning, said, Kevin, you need to head over to, Panera's or Starbucks or whatever, and just start putting this stuff on your laptop. And that's what I did. I trusted her in that sense. I was really in a bad place. I mean, it was ugly. It was, nothing what I look like now, I can tell you. And I started just doing that. And then over the period of time of weeks and months, I just kept doing this, and it did. It helped. It helped tremendously just to get out of this mode. But here's what ended up happening, Larry, is that, again, remember, I had this long, deep well of knowledge in personal growth. I was a Christian at the time, and all these sorts of things. And what ended up happening is that I ended up writing about what I was feeling. And in some places, and this is in retrospect, I realized I was almost coaching myself with the things that I understood. So I was both the patient and the therapist at the same time, but I didn't realize what was going on. I was just brain dumping and things. So in any event, I brought this, after a month or two of doing this, I decided to walk across the street. I had it printed out at one of the print shops. I took it home. I said, I was just telling Jane, I was feeling much better. And I just appreciated that she really kind of pushed me to do this. And so I said, and just here's what I've been writing about. I mean, we were both kind of open books to each other in any event. So that night she read it and got up the next morning. She said, Kevin, you've been talking about for a few years about writing a book. And here it is,
Wow.
Here's, people need to know this stuff that you're feeling. And how to do this transitioning from major life transitions and so forth. But here's the thing. Here's one of the biggest things that I learned there out of this. So anyways, the book was born out of that. It still took several years later to write it, because again, I mean, I was a pretty good writer, wrote a lot of heavy duty reports and summaries and these all the sorts of things. But I actually didn't think I'd ever become an author. I just thought it was too complicated and just beyond my abilities at this point. So in any event, but here was one of the big things lessons that came out of that. At some given point, I realized that the entire time when I started becoming frustrated, that whether I'm speaking to myself, in this case, I was, yes, sort of speaking to myself, but really speaking to God. And I remember I was complaining to God, and I was literally using these words in my head, maybe even out loud, God, why are you doing this to me? Why? I'm trying my best. And I just complained and complained. And as I started writing and thinking about all these things, I realized it was a pivot. It was a huge moment in my life when I realized that after I started coming out of this depression and anxiety, I started praying more faithfully. And I remember realizing that all along I had been asking myself and God completely the wrong question. And this is the lesson that I learned, that the question changed from why in the hell are you doing this to me to God, what are you asking of me? What do you want me to do?
Wow.
And again, we can take this even out of the religious context.
You're right.
And back to what I had commented on the first episode was this concept of asking questions. And of course, I've studied much more since then, realizing it's not just the questions you ask as a leader. It's the questions you ask yourself as well. Again, you can think about this in the spiritual context if you want, or you can speak of this in the secular context to ask yourself, why are you doing this to me? As opposed to, what are you asking of me? In any context, that's because that question, that second question is one of curiosity. That your mind decides, what? I need to go discover that answer. The other one is nothing more than a complaint.
Wow, that's so good. And Kevin, you actually wrote this book out of your pain. So Correct. Out of your pain comes a book to help others.
Right. That's exactly right.
So many times I find that the deep, rich writings come from our struggle, come from our pain. And so congratulations to you and to your wife, brilliant that she is, that says, look, let's start doing something. And when you found that you were doing something, you amazingly had this book. And then I love your change of perspective of asking, what are you asking of me? That's beautiful. It really is using curiosity. It's being humble enough to say, instead of being defensive, instead of taking that first question you said was a defensive posture,
why are you doing
took
this
an
to me?
open, curious posture. And boy, that's just another example of great leadership.
You can think of that in the leadership context very easily, of course, from the standpoint that leaders who may struggle with, let's just say, employee engagement, or let's say with how their employees view them, with morale problems. So a leader can go into an organization like, into their organization like this and ask their people, what's wrong with you all? What, why are, it's a great company. I'm a good leader. Why are you all behaving like this? So you could ask that.
Absolutely.
Or you can go to the employees and say, okay, I'm listening, what are you asking of me? What would you like me to do? And hear from them.
It's great. It's a great lesson to learn. And Kevin, I have a feeling we're going to be talking more because you're so interesting and articulate. I know our time is coming to an end.
Yes.
But would you mind if I take us back for a moment? Can I chase? It's more than a rabbit. It's a thought that I would really value your perspective on from serving in our military. You spoke of the chaos and some of us, and I do remember, I was young, I was a child, but in the late 60s and then the early 70s, the chaos that our country suffered from with the racial issues and the war in Vietnam, as you've mentioned, and what that does to the military and the morale. But we want to learn from our history. We want to learn from our experiences. I'm wondering if I could just take us down right now as we are recording this podcast. There's another war going on in our world, and the Ukrainian people are rising up heroically under a hero of a leader in President Zelensky, and he is with the people. He is there helping and leading. We talk about leadership, and I don't want to minimize death and horror of war, because you know it better than anyone, and you know it better than I do. I do want us to look at this and learn and look at this. And right now we are praying. We are wondering what we can do tangibly to help these people who are in the fight for their livelihoods and their families and their homes and their businesses. My question to you is, Kevin, with this war that seems purposeless, one side you have people coming together heroically, and the might of Russia. I mean, they're right as we speak. Yeah. They're circling cities and marching through with their weapons that are superior to what the Ukrainians seem to have. What does that do? Just for a minute, if you're in the Russian military, and you're going for it, is it that you just get in line as a soldier does, or do you think there's a place or a point where some of these soldiers will go, what are we doing? And we're killing civilians, and
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping the latter of what you're saying is going to take place. And I got to be honest with you, and it's only a thought. I would not assert this or conclude this, but I actually wonder, when they talk about this long stream of this 20 or 40 miles, whatever they're saying, of this caravan that's going into the cities that has been stalled for days. The thought has actually crossed my mind that that's intentional on the part of those people that are sitting there. That they don't maybe have the will to go in and do what's going to happen. I mean, wow. Again, I won't assert that. I'm just going to say that thought has crossed my mind. I think there's a lot of, that to sort of pack that whole question. There's a lot of complicating factors there. We already know Putin's a dictator. He is, in my understanding, he's very compartmentalized. He probably only hangs out with a few trusted souls. He probably has people testing his dinner beforehand, and these sorts of things. So what happens there is that he is completely disconnected from his own people and his own military. And he probably doesn't actually know what's in their minds, quite frankly. When you're a dictator, again, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a military person to figure this out. As a dictator, the way that he is, and others like Kim Jong-il and others, your people are not telling you the truth. Wow, they're not going to tell you the truth. Why? Because it may cost you your life, not just your career. So what you essentially have is probably some sort of a sociopathic person who is who's decided that he, whatever his motives are. I mean, some say it's to bring the Soviet Union back or whatever that is, and so he's pushing that out there. But here's the thing: you take Zelensky on the other hand. Every leader on God's green earth needs to be watching him, because here you have a man who is a comedian, a television personality, and one of the things that he has done, and others have said this, is that first of all, he took some of his transferable skills. We've heard this term before, right? Transferable skills.
Yeah.
So he took his skills as a comedian, as an actor, as a media personality who understands media, and used them to his benefit. And I do mean from a good standpoint, not just here's a comedian talking. This man has some depth. So start with that as leaders, what are your skills? What skills can you use to improve your situation, your organization, your department? So that's one thing. But the other thing is that he's showing you. I'm sure you've run into this many times, and it's a relatively, I guess you could say, hot topic. And that is that, talking about leaders that show compassion and empathy and connected to their people. You want to know how to do that? Watch Zelensky. He's showing you how to do that. He's doing everything from what I can tell, what I understand, both militarily and from a soft skills leadership standpoint. He's doing everything right.
You know, he truly is. And we talk a lot about leading with our head and our heart and crossing
Yes.
that line. And Zelensky
Bam.
is what an example of inspiring his people, being there with him, but at the same time executing some really strategic, brilliant moves with an inferior army with less numbers and those kinds of things. Our military.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at his leadership, and
Me too.
once again, I don't want to minimize the horror of death that
Right.
they are experiencing.
Yeah.
I am amazed and inspired by what he is doing and what the
Yes.
people of Ukraine, how they have
Yes.
responded and
Yes.
stayed and fought for their homeland.
Yes,
But,
they can't see this now, and I completely agree with you. It's easy for you and I to sit here and talk about this and realizing that they're under an immense horror. But what I suspect is that the world will get a huge lesson out of this man and this country, and we should learn from these people.
May it be so. Thank
Yep.
you, Kevin. Thank you for this. It means so much. You have taught me today. You touched my heart, you've touched my head, and you're amazing. And what a great leader. Thank you for what you're doing to impact people and leaders across this country and abroad. You're doing it, man. You're making a difference, and I want to thank you for that. Thanks for your journey.
Those are the kindest words, Larry. I appreciate you, and those are very kind words, and I know you're doing the same. So thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
My friend, I owe you a cup of coffee, and we'll do it soon.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
All right.